Hello, hello.
Good afternoon. How you doing?
We good, we good.
Okay, I'm fine. Thank you so much for taking the time join us on this particular episode of 33 Exchange. Just a bit introduction about 33 Exchange and what it's all about. 33 Exchange is actually a podcast that focuses on Africans' wisdom, wealth, and as well as talent, particularly at the intersection of Web3, tokenization, and payment orchestration, basically. So what we're trying to do is to share as much as the potential, the wealth of the continent into the world worldwide, and to bring in people like yours, with wealth of your experience, to actually share with us what you have, what the world actually needs, and to show the world the kind of talent that actually here on the continent. So thank you so much for joining us, and we are so much happy for having you. So before we start, I would like for you to just try to introduce yourself before we go into it.
Okay. Well, I'm Nirvanan Nyameko Mudli, an entrepreneur here in South Africa for approximately 25 years. Well, actually, not approximately, it's actually 25 years since I started this journey of being an entrepreneur. I have a varied spectrum of influences in my life, and more critically, what I have done or achieved or been a part of. So I've been born into a certain level of privilege, especially coming from the context of South Africa. And that is the fact that I was born to parents who are the authentic freedom fighters of Africa or for Africa, especially in the fight against apartheid. And so I've been placed in a position of philosophy and ideology that looks to the aspirational growth, freedom, and capacity building of Africa and for Africa.
Thank you so much. Yameko, I will call you Yameko on this call. You and I have been on several conversations, and I think, as I said to you when we were speaking, I will be very greedy if I speak to you alone and I understand the kind of wealth of experience you have, the wealth of knowledge that you have, and I just take it up to myself. And that's why I'm bringing it to this platform, to my audience, to also share with them so much of what I've learned within the short period of time that I've get to know you, so much that I've extracted from you, to also share it with my audience. And that's why we're having this conversation. Without any further ado, I will start with your history, because I've been in several conversations with you. There was a time when we were speaking and you told me that when you were 18 years old, you actually sold your first software company to fund yourself, to fund your education in the university. 18 years old. Yes. Then I think about myself, like, what was I doing then? I can't even remember. I can't even remember being 18 years old. So I just wanted to ask, what was that 18 years old boy of you thinking that you feel like, of course, that it's not very common in the world of nowadays, that the same age of nowadays should be thinking in the same direction?
So that actually talks to an aspect of being in the right time at the right place. So I had just finished matric, or what is called grade 12 today, locally. And obviously I was, again, once more fairly fortunate that I was one of the first South African Black students. In actual fact, my class of 1991, the first grade 12ers to actually do computer science and computer studies at school. So we were coding from the time we were 15, 16 as Black students in South Africa in the schooling system. And what I feel like the same was what I had a part to. I was part-time, had a part-time job with what we call is a bargaining council in the trade union structures. And I was literally typing and capturing membership cards. And after the first 3 days, I was annoyed at this archaic technology that was being provided to us to put on and literally a hard card. Name, telephone numbers, address, and then job description and company where they worked. So I realized, hey, hold on. We wrote a school, well, I wrote for my year-end project, a school's administration system. And I literally saw no difference between a learner and a member of a trade union. And I said, well, okay, it doesn't really take much to convert or change it. So let me adapt the school's administration system for the membership system of the trade union. But this was me just playing around. And then a crazy incident happened, and there was a huge, massive meeting of all executives of the bargaining council. And long story short as to why I ended up dropping a tray of tea and coffee and water, hot water and milk onto the chairperson and president of the bargaining council. And weirdly enough, I had my computer back then, it was a proper desktop. I had taken it into the office just to play around with it. And I just said, whoa, hold on, there's an opportunity here, even though I've caused mayhem. Let me demonstrate while everybody was reconfiguring themselves in the boardroom. I set up my desktop and I presented my solution. And they then offered me to say, okay, well, come and do this entire project for us. And that's how I actually ended up selling that piece of software and putting myself through university. And so that was data capturing and systems install for myself. And then in the first year, got 5 of my other friends. And during the evenings, we data capture just close on to 65,000 members into that system. So to come back to the actual question, I'd already somehow was always working either from a very young age, part-time in shoe stores, at a friend's fruit and veg. His father owned a fruit and veg stop in a city north of Durban called Pinetown. I bartended on weekends. So I'd already been living this existence of knowing what it was to actually be employed, be in the working environment. So it wasn't so much that, yes, I thought I was going to be an entrepreneur. In actual fact, I didn't know I was being entrepreneurial at all. And it was just always opportunity, time, and a moment where you responded as a person to that environment. It actually had nothing to do with that I was 18 and I had this vision. No, it was 3 things and 3 moments coming together where I responded. I kind of had a solution, and that's actually how it's followed my entire life, where when you seize the moment, and there's always the innate desire from a very young age of want. So you fed into that want. So at that point in time, it was just a gut instinct to get me out of trouble that I had caused for myself, right? In terms of dropping this tray of tea and coffee onto the chairperson. And it wasn't even orchestrated. But as we develop into this conversation, and what I would like to share is, how do you find maximum value in that moment? How do you respond in a moment of disaster or even in a moment of opportunity positively? So it wasn't about this young mind. Yes, I was actually at 18, I was mixed with many different aspects of, more critically, I think my biggest passion at that time was obviously the politics and the circumstances of where we in South Africa found ourselves and what was our social conditions. But specifically to say that I was an entrepreneur, when I look back and I look at the other elements that developed over time, that I found myself in opportunity. I mean, like my first job, which was I think I was about 7 or 8, and I used to cut bread at the local corner shop shop in Overport, which is a suburb in Durban. And there again, it was Rocky, and the store was called Rocky's Tea Room. He knew the plight of my parents, and so he'd always do something favorable for me. And that's why I said, even though I did end up having privilege when I was born, though my father was in prison, my mother was under house arrest. We had the state of South Africa against my family. But there are these people around me that always were able to protect me from the bigger, harsher world, give me opportunities, or I found opportunities naturally, and I was able to harness it. And even that for the tea room was more of, let's get bread for home. It was a need. It was, you had to feed the 4 people that lived in our home, which was my mom, her sister, my cousin, and myself. So it was getting bread, just getting simple, being paid in bread for doing cutting bread at the store. And then came a moment when I was sweeping the backyard and store area for Rockies. There was this massive box of these card systems and books where you collected either Star Wars cards or Star Trek cards or Walt Disney cards or soccer cards or music, pop star music cards. And this was a whole competition of filling all these cards to win a BMX back in those days. And this was done and distributed by a massive conglomerate called Coca-Cola. Obviously, everyone knows Coke, or SAB, who our distributors were in South Africa then. They ran the competition and they created these books, but they never collected it from Rocky. So I said to him, hey, just give this to me. And he was like, yeah, no, it's taking up space. Take that crazy box away from me. And I was like, yeah, okay, cool. I saw the value in it because we wanted it. Yeah. We didn't have the books because it was too expensive for us. The cards were too expensive, especially and why he had this box is that my area was a pseudo middle class kind of framework. But we did not have the wealth to actually buy these things, but everybody wanted it. So I took it back home. My cousin and I and another friend of mine, Daryl, we sat and my aunt said to me, why don't you all sell it to the guys? You got it for free, sell it. So we said, okay, cool. That's a good idea. And then she helped us by saying, why don't you take the 4 packs? There were 4 cards in each pack. Take each card, rip up all the packs, build it up, and then repackage it into 5 cards. And it used to sell for 20 cents back then. And we sold it for 15 cents for 5 cards. And we gave the books away for free. That was my first technical business without even knowing I was creating a business. Yeah. So
I think
when it comes to the 18-year-old, again, it was need, want of, I need to get to university, and there was this opportunity, and that's how it is. And I progressed in a more structured way later on after I left university in creating more opportunities for myself. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. So to go further detail into that moment, right? Going back to that, into that moment, what is the core the core learning, that differentiate from the risk and comfort? What is the core the core knowledge that you actually prepare you to who you are now?
Identifying the moment. What's critical is it doesn't matter. When I look through my entire entrepreneurial life, and if I qualify it from the time I was 6, 7, 8 through to the time now that I'm 52, and I look at all the businesses I have created, it's about identifying the moment. Sometimes what tends to happen is when we as entrepreneurs come into our space, we already have identified a local need, or we have identified a national need or we have identified an international need. But the critical thing in order for success and the building stones to follow or prepare yourself is to identify that one moment.
Yeah.
And how ready are you to respond and be effective in order to execute what you promise in that moment.
Thank you. Amazing. My next question is there a moment in your life that has actually shaped how you see humanity? How did that moment actually give you more hope and more caution about people?
Okay, in actual fact, this question reminds me of my mother.
Exactly.
My mother once asked me, when did you actualize? Or she has a different moment of reflection and I have a different moment of reflection. But it actually was the day when my mother literally told me, you better start learning how to earn money. And go and find a job, a part-time job. The one with Rocky, that was just, it happened because he knew what our family needed. It wasn't me asking him for the job. He offered the job to me. But later on, I found out that actually my mother had said to him, hey, give this young boy a bit of a job. But then for me to holistically see myself in the world, I think I was turning 13 and my mother said, Nia, it's time you better start going out and finding yourself a job. And I literally walked the streets of Durban and I found myself a job at a shoe shop in a street called Beatrice Street. And on a Friday and a Saturday, I'd sell shoes. That went on for about 3 months. Now, how's that a single moment? Because I had to establish independence for myself. I had to realize that survival of who we were as a community, as an individual, survival is critical. And how would you achieve that survival moment? Now, I've already been geared with a philosophy from the time I was born. So innately through what human conditioning is perceived as nature and nurture, I already had the nature of philosophy built into my DNA because both of my parents, being the founders of a philosophy and a guiding purpose and a guiding ideology called the Black consciousness. So I was already imbued, my entire environment was influenced by already a philosophy. And like I said to you in one of our conversations, politics is my religion. Black consciousness is the way I express that religion. So this moment of being independent and finding a job and being empowered with the knowledge of self, because that's what Black consciousness gives you, that moment and that, as we would discuss singularity, that is a moment of singularity where events, conscious understanding, self-awareness comes together in that very single moment and it sparks a new branch for your journey. It doesn't break away from each other. It's still a single stream of life, of the journey of life.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah. Again, in one of our conversations, you said the world is bipolar. I left that conversation. I think it was one of those midlife conversations we have, 1 a.m. and you just drop your phone. You're like, how am I going to sleep now? Because I have to think about these things, So in your own view, what is bipolar? What do you mean by the word is bipolar? Please explain.
Well, firstly, bipolar means that there is a fracture in personality, that it's either 2 ideologies living in the same body or 3 different personalities living in the same body, pulling you apart. And they In another simplest term, it means that the world is crazy. There's no such thing as a normal world. We live in an absolutely crazy world. Crazy from the perspective that we look at the economic controls that enslave us in this modern day. Yet we live in South Africa and we say, yeah, we got a constitution, we're free, we found liberation. But then the economic world makes us slaves, and we don't see ourselves as slaves. And so therefore there's this craziness of what is normality and how we perceive ourselves in this whole existence of the world. And so the world is crazy. There is, not to say that there is no consistency, but, and especially from the concept of racism, the fact that people believe that there are multiple races.
Yeah.
And that's nonsense. That's absolute craziness. There's only one race in the world, and that's the human race. Any other adjective that describes racism or races is a false narrative of control. And yet you think you're free, for example. You think that you are a famous word or a sentence lots of people say is, but I'm not racist. And yet you use words like white, black, colored, Indian.
Wow. Yeah.
So how can you say you're not racist, yet you cling on to these words and say, but I'm not racist? There again, in a classic way, that's craziness. I don't know if you see the madness of our world in that kind of structure. We look at, I want to be free. Yeah? What would you like for yourself? I'd like to be free. Okay. Or I would like to be rich. Or wherever these wants are, when we are dissatisfied with understanding who we are, and that is compounded by the concept of enough is not enough. So you got enough, but I want more. And these are some of the subtleties of the human condition that makes us crazy. You're not happy with yourself in a lot of instances, and you want more. Obesity, or, I want to be thin and starve yourself. These are things that happen in our day-to-day lives, or drug users, or anyone who has right? And yet I know how unhealthy it is. Again, the craziness of our world.
Okay.
And it can grow itself systemically into power dynamics, where, for example, if I look at South Africa specifically, we don't see that even as liberators or fighters against the system, that life is a circle. I like using yin and yang, the picture of yin and yang.
Yeah.
Because the picture or concept of yin and yang wouldn't exist without the other. Our life in South Africa would not be if there was no people who promoted apartheid and those who promoted anti-apartheid. That's a singular collective. It's the person who oppressed and the oppressor. So it's the oppressor who got oppressed and who was the one oppressing. This bipolar existence, this craziness. But when you put it all together, it makes a singular picture. But sometimes people don't seem to understand that in this separation, there's also inclusivity. Also, at the same time, one thing that is most needed in our world is healing. We need to heal this craziness because it just keeps on creating waves of our inconsistent behavior or aspiration for, as the Miss Worlds, Miss Universes, we want peace in the world. We want, that kind of aspirational. And yet we aren't able to reconcile the craziness within each other and within ourselves.
Thank you so much for that. So speaking about humanity, in your perspective, in your view, what is a man? What makes a man?
See, we need to, if anything I've learned from my daughter,
Yeah.
there's this whole concept of LGBTQ, right? If there's anything I've learned from her, okay, in terms of this whole concept of creating male-female dominance, what we need to be asking, that question needs to be rephrased. And that being specifically, what does it mean to be human? The moment we start placing a sexual connotation and a definition and imposing a description upon a person, yes, there's a physicality that I am male. Yes, and this is the whole thing about the human race. We determine for ourselves who we are. Each individual knows firstly and most importantly, there is goodness in us all. Even if there's a mass murderer out there, at one moment, he or she was good. But what broke them to become violent, that's a whole different psychological thing. But to be human is simply to be good to each other, to strive for the best for each other. There's a reason why you and I belong to this tribe, Ubuntu. Because that's what it is to find the best for each other, to serve each other. Now, I come from a different philosophy that ran parallel to the Black consciousness movement, which is my Eastern philosophies, not my African philosophies. But yes, DNA, genetically, historically, there's a part of my moment of a male and female, a sperm and an egg that came together and made me.
Yeah.
In that collision and union, this body was created, this mind was created, this soul found itself in here. And that philosophy stems from one single statement, which is an Eastern language, which represents by the whole concept of Mada, Pada, Guru, Devam, which is mother, father, teacher, then God. And in order to be a good human or a good man, indirectly, means that I must serve that philosophy, that principle in the best way that I can for the embetterment of us all. Because it's about service. Whether I serve myself, whether I serve my family, whether I serve my community, whether I serve God. All of it is for the embetterment, equality, and justice for everyone.
Now, I want us to shift. I want us to shift into the art of your philosophy, right? You've said to me in different conversations that your motto is listening, think, do. What have you learned about the danger of doing without listening or thinking without doing?
This kind of statement I observed through, in actual fact, my Western education. I observed that being in the tech space, we basically are given particular principles of design. Technology actually, firstly in itself, reflects humanity and its input, process, output, IPO. Listen, think, do. Same principle. They are inherent in order for you to be able to have an outcome, to have a positive value. If any one of them fails or anyone is omitted in that analysis or of that premise for you to consider whether it's a piece of program that you're designing or whether it's life itself. Any one of them not happening there is going to be a natural failure. The desired outcome will not be achieved. Classically, let me give you a life moment. And that was, I have been in multiple transactions in the commodity space as well, besides the tech space.
Yeah.
And because a friend or an associate that I have trusted gives me information and I have not thought about it effectively, the outcome has never been achieved. I listened to the person, I didn't process it properly, consider and outweigh the risks. I acted with zero result. In actual fact, not zero result. Let me retract that. In actual fact, it cost me more money. It cost me time. It cost me effort. And the total impact was failure. And none of us want to work towards failure. We all want to work towards a successful outcome.
You have contributed to education, technology, finance, and development, right?
Yeah.
What idea or lesson has remained constant across these fields? I mean, education, technology, finance, development. Personally, I know you have been across these different departments, different sectors, different fields.
Yes.
So what is one particular idea that has remained constant across these sectors, across this field, in your experience?
Education. Okay. Again, remember we talked about earlier is that it's nature and nurture. Nature is the inherent attributes you receive from your physical and mental and developed that is naturally given to you. So in my history of knowing who I am, we are generationally teachers from both sides of my DNA pool, both my mother's side and history to my father's history and what's contributed to who I am. Again, like I have Mother Pada Guru Devam, or the natural order that Black consciousness is a way of life. Another concept that has always been inherent with me has been the fact that education must be shared. Knowledge must be shared. Education must be free. And so whenever the environment presents itself to me, I'm always very considerate to understand how do we promote the education, the understanding and acceptance of whether it is financial, whether it's technology, whether it is education itself, whether it is health. Education is the bedrock to all in our world. And if we actually look at the human development over centuries, one of the fundamentals that I always talk about and I've tried to teach either my children or anyone for that matter is that there is this structure of replication, and it's the innate survivalness. It's in our world, in the tech world, it's copy and paste. I'm replicating the concept. I'm copying from one and I'm pasting on the other. In technical educational terms, that's what we call is a rote system. And I'm a very strong proponent for the existence of the rote system. But there is a moment of realization when one has accepted that, but one also needs to understand that there has to be a development, there has to be a betterment of that existence, even in the educational space. And that's when you allow life to find itself, to explore for itself independently without any controls. But there has to be a light bulb moment for the individual in their acceptance of themselves, even of that education, in order to find and discover something new. And all that listen, think, do actually helps to enforce is the foundation of oneself in the journey in discovering oneself.
Speaking about education, Jamaica, what is the most valuable wisdom? I mean, the most valuable wisdom in your experience a person can gain through only age and never through study or youth.
So there are two ways to analyze that. And that the first is that we're talking about experiential understanding, self-discovery, and you can do that in an institution of learning. But some people get caught up in the academia of it rather than the execution of it. And again, it comes back to that whole concept of listen, think, do. It doesn't necessarily have to be institutionalized, but it can be experientially based. Take my father, for example. In my sentiment of him, yes, as a human and a man, he's unqualified. He has no tangible certificate that says this is who he is or was. But there's never been a better writer in Africa than my father. That's not to being biased. Look, there's enough in my world to knock my father down, like we always say. The one generation blames the generation before. But it is a natural sense that when I assess him as a human in this world, firstly, he created, to me, I have now accepted it, I've embodied it, which is Black consciousness. I rebelled against it at one phase of my life. But when I looked at its essence and he being the writer of the Black consciousness movement and the contributor for the creation of this philosophy, life trained him. He desired equality and justice for all, and he found his way. Yes, he did go to university, he dropped out, but what did he do with himself? Did he give up on his dreams? Did he fall short of what he saw the world to being? No, he persevered, he continued. He fought through the biases of our society. And when you look at his plays, you look at his poems, you look at his writing in the newspapers and various publications, succinct, my friend. If I were to look at him as a man in front of me, and I would say, no, he was prophetic at one level. His knowledge, his consumption of information, interpreting it for the world, and then projecting it out there into the world. It does not require, he proved to the world he didn't need a certificate to get where he wanted to be. And that's the thing about education, right? It's how do we learn? How do we acquire experience? How do we acquire and execute? The most important thing in that listen, think, do is the do element. You have to do something with it. You can't stay still with information. You've got to also share it in order to improve upon it. And I'm hoping I'm answering your question.
Yes, you are.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. So in the same sentence, how can a young leaders accelerate access to that wisdom pragmatically?
You and I are part of a business structure at the moment, and we are sharing experiences. And there's this, and actually, it happened to me today, and I just thought, wait, hold on. I'm okay. Number one, I'm probably getting old because it happens to old people. That the youth always want to rush into things. Energy, obviously, it's energy, right? And it's about, as the older you get, the slower you get in one element. Mind is always, I lie. My kids, man, you got to see my kids. 30 seconds, I get pumped. I'm hopeless these days in translating words and information spontaneously or quick enough. But this is the whole concept. We don't really have to rush. See, right now, what actually is required, and if you take a look at the last 96 hours of what you and I did with our team.
Yeah.
To do it in that time and to achieve what we did. It takes a team. So we are working, yes, in silos, but we're collaborating finally, and that's how you will achieve speed, time, effectiveness. You don't have to rush yourself. But if you are impactful with the time that you use and be productive in even 2 items of a 5 list element of things to do, you will gain the collective understanding to the satisfaction that you need to do it in with. But don't need to rush it. It's how to use time effectively. And that's what we have. We have the advantage now because of technology. I mean, look at that. Look at the 5 of us. We're in 5 different countries. Sorry, we're in 4 different countries.
Yeah.
And to do what we did this weekend, I mean, come on. That's amazing. And if you want to talk about the speed to desire to get your outcome, you firstly need to find yourself in the right team, to be in the opportunity of the right moment, to achieve a collective ability that's fast enough. We don't have to chase it. Just the youth of today just needs to work collaboratively. And we say youth, yet I'm the old one. You 4 were youth. So no, for everyone.
Come on, don't try to show me you're an old man right now. You're still a boy, you're still a guy. Okay, now let's explore technology and consciousness and how they kind of intersect, right? Because I know you are a very knowledgeable man across this different sector. I can say that anywhere, anytime, right? So let's look at you have been part of several teams. As I said previously, you've worked across different sectors, across different fields in your life. You sold your first software company at the age of 18 years. I mean, I can't remember what I was doing during that time. You've done stuff.
Clarification, I sold my first software, not my first software company. I sold my first software at the age of 18.
Exactly.
It was, yeah.
Now, so you've been part of these exercises, these, initiatives. You've built things with different teams. You've pioneered. What is the invisible cost? The invisible cost of innovation that no one prepares you for.
Okay, the invisible cost. Cost is, firstly, any activity is based on time. It is the constant, whether we look at any physical science equation by Newton or by Einstein, time is the constant. And so therefore it is also the constant cost. So strangely enough, though I'm very strongly an anti-capitalist on one side, but one of the books that I think I mentioned to you is written by Bill Gates, which is Business at the Speed of Thought. Again, speed of thought. It in itself has to do and correlates with time. And when you actually look at his summation and his perspective of development of many elements and areas of business or areas of economies or areas of social development, or whether it's political understandings, even adapt to now we have something called a social entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Time is the biggest thing. And it's about not necessarily being the first to market, but making sure that you get into the market at the appropriate time to be able to become successful. And whatever version or measurement of success looks like. And that's also a critical element. How do we perceive success? What are the metrics that quantify success? If I've developed a piece of software and I made X amount of money, is it the profitability that is a success? Or if my team has developed something innovative in its moment, but sold it for R1 or even for R1,000,000, which do I consider the success? The capacity of my people in achieving that moment of success? Which one of the two elements in time is more valuable? To say I am a successful person. So, to the question of innovation and cost, I would say that the ultimate is time and cost.
Speaking about innovation, Yameko, also to relate it to the purpose of this podcast, which is advanced technology from Africa, relating back to Africa. If Africa doesn't define its role in the advanced technology, such as Web3, tokenization, payment orchestration, what future risk do you foresee?
Okay. See, we in Africa have always been behind the curve of technology. Yet, here's the crazy thing about Africa, which nobody knows. Electrification in Africa happened before Europe. Electrification happened in Africa before New York. We had a city in Africa that was already electrified before New York was. It's about identifying our participation in that equation. And your question is succinctly important for us today. And I'm going to say why. Because we want freedom for Africa. The most important thing for us in our wealth creation is to gain back our land that has been taken away from us. And the land doesn't just mean physically land. We're talking commodities that are extracted out of our land, beneficated outside of Africa and resold to us at 900 times the cost. Now, in order for us to find our freedom, we have to take ownership of Web3. We've got to take ownership of tokenization. And how do we do that? We represent that by showing our land, not whether it's only agriculture, whether it's gold, whether it's silver, whether it's platinum. We need to show people our value in this whole construct of blockchain, cryptocurrencies, and tokenization. We need to show how can we resell and repurpose our products and our land collectively as Africa, or otherwise Africa is going to stay in 1892. Now I'm going to repeat that, 1892, because in that year, Europe decided how to carve up Africa into Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, Libya, Egypt, Liberia, coming all the way across to Eritrea, dividing us in Africa. We will stay divided. And the more we are divided, the more imprisoned and enslaved we will be. For us to take ownership for ourselves and create our independence with a sense of equality and justice, tokenization, blockchain is our answer. And it's an answer. It's not this perfect silver bullet, but it is the answer.
Your journey, like you said, you are 52 years old. I mean, you've done so many things across different sectors. And for students that are still in school, they are looking at their future ahead. If you could summarize all this entire journey to where you are right now, back then to maybe 9 years old, your first job, 18 years old when you sold your software, to where you are right now, the things you've done, if you could summarize it into one principle, what will it be for the next generation to adopt, to explore and exploit?
Okay, because it actually has never changed. And the statement is, I am black. That's it. In order to understand what that actually means is my affirmation by calling myself black.
Yeah.
And how I empower myself. It has nothing to do with the black and proud nonsense that comes from the Americans. I am black epitomizes my self-worth, my persona, and my personal belief system, because it is the culmination of defining myself. It encapsulates the fact that, number one, in order for you to be black, you have to flee yourself from oppression. So therefore, as a summative, I am black means that I have freed myself from any levels of oppression. And I revel in true freedom of my mind. And therefore, when I revel in the freedom of my mind and the freedom of purpose, that is how allows me the ability to move through all the sectors that I am, move through all experiences that I have, in order for me to find the better person that I would love to be. Because we are never perfect, and perfect changes from time to time. But me affirming the fact I am black, firstly, fundamental, breaks the shackles of oppression that I find myself in, and I challenge all institutions of control. That's what I am black means, to challenge the equality and justice of institutions, of organizations, of people, to make sure that they define themselves and understand who they are. And you can run away from it, but I've found that, yes, I've tried to run away from it many times. And I always come back to the one thing that makes me whole, that makes me a person, that makes me human. And it is the comfort and embrace that I have freed myself from oppression, and most importantly, I am black.
Speaking about what you are, you've also said a lot about your mom, your dad, what they fought for, what they represented, and what what they've passed on to you, and the philosophy you live by. You know, consolidate that experience from your parents now to what you live for. What do you hope people will remember about you 100 years from now?
Firstly, yeah, well, that's an ego hope. No, I think once in a drunken stupor, I sat in a lounge with a very close friend. I'm not going to name him. And I said to him, we are the recorders of history. We are the observers of history. To aspire to be the active actor in that history, not really required. And I think that also comes from the fact that my father's a writer, my mom's a writer. So we record not only our personal journeys, but we record other people's journeys, and we document it, and we try to make sense of it in this whole bipolarness and craziness of our world, the dynamics of power. And if I can only contribute to a byline in that whole consummate book of life, I'll be satisfied. But it's too egotistical to think 100 years from now as to how you have influenced. I hope that in my day-to-day conversations, because that's what I think I am. I'm a street evangelist on one end of my life. And my kids get, like, especially when we get to cashiers and I have to challenge a cashier to identify whether you're black or not and why are you black. Because these are things I question people on a day-to-day basis in just the normal walk of life. That's why I call myself a street evangelist on one level. So 100 years from now, if I make a byline, great, I'll be happy. In other essence, I like calling myself an echo. Because a lot of the words, aspirations and ideas and formulations of what comes through me and is part of me comes from my family, comes from the political history. So I'm just an echo to make sure that that's the sound of that philosophy is amplified in today's world as much as I can in the environments that I can. But yeah, 100 years from now, the legacies were created by my dad and my mom.
What is that one question that you don't want to answer that you have avoided your entire life, and why?
That's actually not happened in my life. Avoidance can be momentary, but I will always come back to the question. And that's because you need to understand, and I think I've given you the genealogy of my name, right?
Yeah.
Nirvanan Nyameko. Nirvanan Nyameko, firstly, Nirvanan is a derivative to the concept of nirvana. And I think my parents made sure that I always stick to my name. And so Nirvanan Nyameko, Nirvanan is an Eastern philosophy derivative to nirvana, which in some places, glibly people think it's a rock band, which it is obviously, a nirvana that is. But in terms of philosophy, it is the one phase before you attain oneness with God. And then Nyameko is a Xhosa name, which means perseverance. So I'm always persevering. But also at the same time, there's a second interpretation that I've learned of late, which is basically the naked truth. So I'm going to have to always try. I avoid answering at times. Yes, I do not deny. But I will always do my best to answer a question or try and find an answer to solve the question. I hope that was politically right.
More diplomatic. Sure.
Sure.
Okay. So again, in my conversation with you, speaking with you, we've identified different personalities, different human personalities, right? I remember a few nights ago when we're just talking about things randomly, and you mentioned different fragmentation we have in humanity. So I want to ask this question. This is a very important question to me and even to the audience that are listening to this. In your experience of life, what personality types in human nature have you identified? What are the different types of personalities have you categorized in human, and what are they?
Now, to each, here's the crazy thing. Because we are influenced by so many different people, within each one of us, there's a different personality type. And adaptive to circumstance and context, one will rise above most and adapt to answer appropriately what is required and requested of them. For me, the simple one is, and you're going to find this weird, oxygen takers. Now, what is an oxygen taker and what is this personality type? This is a person that is just going through life, living off oxygen and not embodying the experience of life, in getting themselves involved, getting themselves, they just, another way of saying it, ignorance is bliss.
They just
And
take from their environment.
Yeah, and they're not giving back. They are the go-getters, obviously. They are yeah. So for me, right now, the people that if they to answer the previous one in a different way or asked it in a different way, and yet it's going to come out this way, is that if you ask me who frustrates me the most,
Okay.
who is a personality type who is an oxygen taker and does not contribute to the improvement of the human, to humanity and to the human race. Anyone who does not participate effectively. And it does not mean that it must create a legacy. I think I'll respect more the tech people who quietly in the background just did the work, who didn't seek the limelight, the recognition, the power hungriness. Now there's those that, well, all of a sudden I've just defined another personality type. Tech pop stars. They're all of them. Yeah. So it's those personality types that probably annoy me because they believe that they are giving back to humanity, but in actual fact, they are stealing. They are our new pirates. They are the new monarchs of the world. And that's there. And then the new slaves of the world are pirates that exploits and owns slaves. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Navan, for this section. It has been wonderful. It was rich, human, and useful. Thank you for your time,
Thank you.
for sharing both your ideas and your story. For everyone listening, this episode struck a chord. Share with a friend and listen, think, and do. From all of us at 33 Exchange, we say thank you so much, Naval, for joining us, for sharing this wealth of experience. And we hope that next time when we reach out to share your experience in a particular topic, you will also answer us again. Thank you so much for the short notice, because we reached out, I think, barely a week or 2 weeks now. And here we are making this happen. So thank you so much for sharing all this wealth of experience, of knowledge, of different philosophy, from your personal experience to things that you've done across different sectors, and how you were able to infuse all this into this particular topic, the episode called the Trinity of Progress: Listening, Thinking, Doing, Africa's Blueprint for Global Tech Leadership. Naval, we want to say thank you so much for joining us, and we wish you and your entire family a wonderful rest of the evening. Thank you. Any last words? Any last word for the audience, especially for those that don't? I'm not sure you're in any of the social platforms that I would have asked them to probably follow you. But if you do have that I'm not aware of, I would like for my audience to also, reach out to you directly, for those that probably have any comments or questions to all of the things you've said so far, that probably want more light in a particular area where they can join you. I would like for you to also share that, if you have any platform where they can reach out to you, and if not, they can actually direct all their comments to us. Since we have the direct channel of communication to you, we can always find a way to bring you back on the platform, and probably make it a kind of live section where people can come on the platform, ask you the question that the burning desire, the burning questions or comments that they may have based on some of the things that you've said so far. So yeah, give us your last, and probably if you have any platform where people can reach out to you, we would like to have that as well.
I have tied out or closed off my Facebook framework. But I'm going to just, because you've kind of lit the fuse, because people have constantly asked me to start writing either a book or get onto this podcasting.
Yeah.
or social media space. So all I'm going to say is watch out for the barfly.
Okay. What is barfly?
So a fly that visits the bar, that's number one, the barfly. So yeah, I'm going to be, now officially, I'm not going to be a pseudonym anymore. It's going to be the title of my commentary and potentially my Instagram space, which is going to be called the barfly, or the return of the barfly, purely because my father started it as how he signed off many of his works, the barfly. And I would love for people, not necessarily, I just want to say this much. There's a MBA case study where you saw the Russians and the Americans going to space, and the Americans invested approximately $10 million inventing a pen to write in space. And the Russians always laughed at the Americans and said, "Why? We have a pencil." So yes, it's how do we interpret technology fit for purpose, most importantly, and beneficial, cost effectiveness. We talked about it, and time. Yes, one group went and spent many hours developing something, and yet we had the technology. It's be considerate of what you think you don't have and what actually you do have. Use it and maximize it to your best ability to get the best for yourself and for others.
Thank you.
That's me from the Barfly Corner.
Thank you so much,
Ola.
Yamelko. This was remarkable. You are the first guest we're having on this podcast, and I can tell you are not going to be the last. And this, even for yourself, is not going to be the last time. We are also going to be reaching out to you for, like I said, specific area where we understand your wealth of knowledge, particularly in Africa, your work across different countries in Africa. So thank you so much for joining this platform. Thank you for blessing us with your wealth of experience, of wisdom, and knowledge, and we look forward to staying in touch. Thank you so much, and do enjoy the rest of it.
Thank you.